From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
Oh, that makes me Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to our living room once again. We are delighted that you are here. I can't guarantee how long we'll be able to go without dogs whining, because they've been in the crate for a few minutes, and
the clock starts as soon as they go in.
Clock starts as soon as, and they have very good clocks.
That is true. That is true. Well, welcome to our port in the storm as we shelter from March Madness.
No, not that.
Yeah, we're not talking about basketball either.
No, I tell you, March is a weird time of year anyway. That, first of all, it's the equinox, which is traditionally a pagan ritual season. Yep. We've also got just the idea of animals that are getting together and having dates.
It's that time of year. Yeah.
Bunnies.
Yep.
The idea of the March hare being crazy. Yeah, that's where that comes from. Because all over the place.
I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. We don't have too many
Another childhood illusion shattered.
In England, the hares in the summer, in the spring and March, the idea of the March hare, which was in Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yep. And he was a little crazy.
Yeah.
We were just late for, which took her through a portal, by the way, and it took her to Crazy Land. But the hares over in England, I read about them years ago, and yeah, they are known to behave in really crazy ways.
Well, at this time of year, that is what they're known for. It's the same reason we drive a little more carefully through this time of season, as the deer are a little distracted and may just run across the road, not paying attention. I got to get to the other side.
There are raccoons out there. Yep. There are coyotes out there. In fact, I think coyote season was a month or two ago. By the way, speaking of things like that, you told me that someone saw a mountain lion not too far.
Heard it. Yeah, it was out towards, it's north of us, out towards the small towns of Hurley and Clever.
That call is unmistakable.
Yeah, sounds like a woman screaming. It is not a sound you'll forget. We heard it here several years ago and thought, boy, that's a strange sounding bird. Well, not long after that, at night, and not long after that, the Stone County Sheriff posted that the mountain lion had been seen at Branson West, which is about 20 minutes southeast of us.
There was one hit by a car a few years ago nearby, I think in Billings.
Yeah. According to what it was a nurse at my mother's nursing home had said that a calf had been taken down by a mountain lion up that way. So they are here. Somebody also, and every now and then we'll get reports of bear out in this area, which is why Southwest used to be Southwest Missouri State. Now it's Missouri State University.
Right.
The teams are named the Bears.
Oh, I know. And yet another reason, if you live in this area, it's another reason not to allow your small animals, your pets, to be outside. And that can be your livestock. If they are lambing or calving right now, they're at risk.
Black-headed vultures too.
Black-headed vultures.
They've spread this far west.
Around, So
life in the country.
Watch. I saw on X, I think it was, a picture that purported to be taken by, and in fact, the story that went along with it. It was an owl that had been wounded. The owl was photographed in a chicken coop.
Oh, really?
Apparently, because owls will go after chicks, and they'll go after small chickens and eggs and things like that. And the chickens apparently ganged up on the owl. They damaged his shoulder and his wing. And so the homeowner took the owner of the chicken coop took the owl to the vet, and the vet took care of the owl. I thought, well, good for you, chickens. Bravo, chickens.
Yes, absolutely. It's like, look, the price of eggs are already high enough. We're not contributing to this any further. Get out of here. So anyway, March Madness, things are going crazy out there. Before we dive into how JFK built the pyramids with the help of aliens, we'll
and Penelope Keith.
Just remind you to please download our mobile app, or download our app for iOS or for Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, whichever. But it guarantees that the content will get to you and not be screened and perhaps intercepted by big tech. The company that produces our app and maintains it is a Christian company, and they have not in 10 years of using it with Skywatch TV and the last 5 of using it for our Gilbert House Ministries app. They have not shown any interest whatsoever in censoring what we say.
They are so responsive. Anytime
Yes.
we have a problem or a question, they're constantly updating things. They keep, if
Yep.
it slows down an upload, they get in there and they try to figure out the problem. They are really good company. They represent a lot of huge churches.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Skywatch TV, of course, uses it, but so does Prophecy Watchers, Ellie Marzulli,
But
Ken
big
Johnson.
monster churches
But
too.
yes, big
That's where
churches
they
use it.
started.
Right.
And if you are listening to this and you are in ministry and you're thinking, I can't afford to build an app, contact Subsplash and see what sort of deals they can work out for you. Because
Right.
I got to tell you, compared to secular hosting, they're
Very
much
reasonable.
less.
Very reasonable. And once you get an app, especially if you go with the TV apps like Roku, and probably about half of our views are on Roku, and a good portion of the rest are on iOS, Android some. Bottom line, though, is if you're in ministry and you're looking for a way to get your message out there, other than YouTube, which always puts you at risk of being censored, then, and Rumble, but Rumble doesn't have the reach of YouTube. Subsplash.com, and we can recommend them without reservation.
Our app also has a blog section on it, doesn't it?
It does, and I'm going to look into changing to our Substack account, because I've been posting articles once a week at the website, but for some reason it wasn't rendering the RSS feed correctly. I'm getting into the weeds and the technical stuff, but I'm going to see if I can switch it over to the Substack, because and encourage you to subscribe to the Substack account. Substack, it's gilberthouse.substack.com, posting excerpts from our books for free.
You've been doing that every day.
Yeah, and just trying to get caught up to where we are on the website. And then I'm just going to switch over and just post everything from now on over there at Substack, which has become a very popular blogging site. Many independent journalists have been using it as a way to publish stories they want to investigate without having to go through their own gatekeepers, like the New York Times, or the Washington Post, or they can just set up their own account. They can put everything behind a paywall, some of it behind a paywall. We don't put anything behind the paywall, but many of you, but Substack does. I think where they're unique is that they allow for people to donate if they choose. There's a very easy method for donating. And we've been surprised and blessed by the number of people who just voluntarily donating. I mean, all of the content is there to read for free. So, because we never want to make it, unless it's something that really costs us money, like producing a video or publishing a book.
Right, but even then we try not to charge a whole lot for it. You can stream our travel documentaries of Israel.
It's $3. Yeah. But the excerpts are coming right from our published books anyway. Yeah. So if you can't afford the book, go to Substack. You can read them in chunks. And I'm going to try to link that at the app as well under the blog section. And of course, then there's the messaging section where you can join a community, a growing community of people who are, it's wonderful to see the support, people saying, hey, how are you doing today? Been praying for you, that sort of thing. If you've got the mobile app on your phone or tablet, it's a little thing that looks like talk bubbles up there, talk balloons in the top right corner. Click on that and go in there, and you can join in that community, ask questions of us. And one of those, of course, deals with the Giza pyramids. We'll get to that here in just a bit.
Yeah, by the way, those of you who have been praying for Derek in particular, he really needs to get in to see a neurologist. And we've been told it could be a year.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that there isn't someone who wants a new patient in this area. So
yeah,
pray that we are able to get in. Derek has a chat with his primary care doctor soon.
Coming up
I'm
this week,
sure you can ask him about that. So pray that he'll be able to get referred and get in quickly, because you've lost a lot of conduction in your nerves, and in particular the nerves operating your legs and feet.
Right. Yeah. When I had that nerve conduction test a week ago, Friday, and they found that essentially I've got no response in the nerves that connect to the muscles in my feet and ankles.
Right. Even
So,
some of the sensory isn't working correctly.
yeah, because that's why they're
You've lost a
partially
little
numb.
bit in one of your arms. So we don't know if that's going to be continue to progress. We just want to find answers. Bottom line is the answer is the Lord. We pray about it. We
Right.
know you've been praying about it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm okay with if it turns out that this is the new reality for me.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the Apostle Paul prayed 3 times to have a thorn in the flesh removed,
Mhm.
and God's answer was, "No, my grace is sufficient for thee."
Yep.
So that's my prayer each day. It's like, look, if I could get around without the cane, that'd be great. But as long as I have to do it, that's what I'll do. And Moses didn't complain 40 years walking around in the desert with a staff as an old man. It is what it is.
Yep.
So,
And I will say again that you've been handling this with such grace. So the Lord allowing this, at the very least, those people watching the way you handle it, I think that they have to be impressed with regards to your faith, but also the Lord's faithfulness.
well, if people who watch what we do, whether it's on Unraveling Revelation, Skywatch TV, 5 and 10, whatever, if they don't realize that I'm dealing with anything,
Mm,
then that's fine,
yeah.
because that's not what we're called to do. I can still think, I can still speak. Although you might notice my voice sounds a little different today. I'll talk about that in a second. But the bottom line is that the Lord is allowing it for whatever reason He's got, and I'll know what that reason is someday.
Yeah.
But and that's the other thing I pray for is, Lord, whatever lesson is in this for me, just help me to learn it. So it's probably easier for me than it would be for guys who were very athletic in their younger years. I never was. So, I mean, I was always, in grade school, I was the kid with allergies and flat feet and glasses. So it wasn't like I was the kid who was out there on the baseball team, football team, basketball team. That was never me. I was the guy who was on the debate team, on the speech team, involved in choir and things like that didn't involve having to run. So it might be a little easier for me had it been, had I been used to being very physical as a younger man. So maybe that's a blessing. But whatever. Again, all of us are dealing with things, and it does help me to appreciate things that are taking for granted. Like this past week, sort of a low-level sore throat I've been dealing with for a couple of weeks, and just assuming it was allergy season and postnasal drip, which I've been dealing with quite a bit.
And you've been using a neti pot, trying
Yeah.
to keep your sinuses clean.
Right. I've learned the hard way over the years. If I don't do that, I can get these sinus infections. So I don't want to go through that. Plus, during COVID, we saw that there was good research that people who use a neti pot regularly actually came out of COVID better. So that's a regular tool in the toolbox. So I've been doing that. And this past week, though, this sore throat got to the point where I mentioned it when I was at the naturopath, Dr. Matthew Sams at the Branson Healing Arts Center on Wednesday. Said, but I think it's just tonsil stones because I occasionally get those. Used to be prone to those a lot when I was younger. Turns out that wasn't it. Got up Thursday. It's like, wow, this is really painful. This is as painful as the last time I felt like this was when I had strep in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the walk-in clinic. Said, boy, that really is swollen and inflamed. Let's get you. So that put me on an antibiotic.
Yeah, you actually had a peritonsillar infection.
Yeah.
It's sort of a pus sac, if you want to call it that,
Right.
behind the tonsil.
Yep.
And so that was causing the tonsil to be red. Now your uvula's all red. And
Yep.
so, yeah, that's affecting your voice.
Yeah. So it's shrinking, shrinking in part because very early yesterday morning, I woke up with a strange taste in my mouth. Like,
yeah,
that's not right. And
yeah.
I got,
Just so you know, he immediately used peroxide and many
Yep,
things to,
yep.
plus you're on an antibiotic. So,
right. So anyway, that drained out. And but my uvula,
poor little thing.
I know, what a great word, uvula. There was a Saturday Night Live sketch about the uvula. Hey, Bob, how's your uvula? Okay. Yeah, it's still swollen, but I'm sure the amoxicillin will
So
take
if
that.
you're sitting there and you're kind of bored with this discussion, feel free to scrub to just advance we understand totally. By the way, if you have been praying for my eyes, they're better. May 2nd is when I get to go and get refracted for the cataract surgery. I have been reading, and I've just given this over to the Lord. I've been doing a lot of reading because I can, with the contrast that I make on the Kindle Reader,
Mhm.
black background, white text, and I make the font as big as it'll go. I can actually read without my glasses at a certain distance for a while. So I've read probably since all of this started, I probably read 30 books. I've
Wow.
read a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
books, and these are books that have helped not only what you and I do in our programs, but also help the plotting forward for the Red Wing saga, and also for the follow-up to the next in the series of the Laodicea Chronicles books that I've been writing. So yeah, there are a couple new ones that are going to come out in that, and also the John Thundercloud book that will hopefully come out later this year. There are a lot of books that I started and just suddenly couldn't see. Just could not see. My eyes were just, it's like looking through lotion, but trust me, they're much, much better. Whatever is happening with the regeneration in my cells in my meibomian glands and in the tissue surrounding that, it seems to be working.
Excellent.
Yeah, they told me it would be an 8-week follow-up to that last treatment, and as every day goes by, it seems like it's a little better. So thank you for your prayers.
Yes,
Bottom
amen.
line is, it's the Lord.
Yeah, yes. And I think it was good advice to, just tell people, hey, look, if you just want to get to the good stuff, just scrub ahead.
Look,
But you
we're
get
the OGs
you get to our
of
age.
Christian podcasting.
That's
It doesn't
right.
just mean,
Old
original
geezers.
gangsters.
Yes,
Old geezers is what
right.
we are. We've been around I just did an interview with,
Justin Brown,
yes, exactly, from the
Prometheus
Prometheus
Lens.
Lens. He's also in the Dig Bible podcast, I
Right,
think.
right.
Yeah, we've known him for several years and love him. I jokingly say I'm your Aunt Sharon. But I did an interview with him, and we were talking about being the OGs and this and that. But what he actually discussed with me was the Gotthard Base Tunnel ceremony from
Right,
2016.
right.
That's in our book, The Gates of Hell. And I wrote that chapter back in 2016, just a few days after it. Strangely enough, RT, that news source, had put the video on YouTube, and it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
6-hour video, start to finish.
Interesting.
All these world leaders that arrived, all of the pageantry that takes place, the background you're given, why they stop at a particular place at the beginning to honor this female saint, and it goes from there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of female inclusion, but also stories about sacrifices during the building of it. 9 people died.
Mm.
So it's high weirdness. If you want to watch 6 hours of high weirdness and maybe then read my chapter, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, it was really bizarre.
Yeah.
But it kind of gets back to what you've been reading also about Peter Levender's book, Unholy Alliance, which was the Nazi party, which was really more of a cult than a political party.
And he gets into the cult part of it. In fact, that's the majority of what he discusses, how the various high members and those who started the whole idea of the superior race, the Aryan race, getting into the beliefs about their right to conquer everyone around, including the whole world, that somehow their pure blood gave them the right to take everybody out, and what their long-term plan of action was.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets into that occult aspect to it, and it's the same occult aspect that he covers in Sinister Forces, which is a 3-book collection where he takes a look at the United States in particular, and how the occult aspect of our intelligence system, our warfare system, our entertainment system, all of that beginning in the early 20th century and going forward, and how 1947 was the synchronicity of a lot of things.
Yeah. The subtitle for the Sinister Forces trilogy is A Grimoire of Political Witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
Grimoire is is a title of a book of evil spells. Yeah, spell book. And political witchcraft is what he describes as the well, is what we would call geopolitics. There are actually things happening behind the scenes, and they're only behind the scenes because most of us would be freaked out if we knew what our political leaders were actually getting up to.
Well, then I'll tell you. You mentioned March Madness, and it has been crazy town March Madness. And one of the early things that happened in this month was the release of the JFK files.
Yes.
And that takes us into that Lavenda book.
Right. Yeah. He gave a presentation a while back. And in fact, this is included in, Lavenda, gave a presentation a while back on the connection between NASA and the JFK assassination. But his research was also, I cited it in Destination Earth, which is the new book I co-authored with Donna Howell and Allie Anderson, on the connections between the JFK assassination and the UFO phenomenon. There are a number of connections. Number one was the group that met under the direction of CIA contractor Dr. Andrea Puharich, beginning in 1955 at a cabin in Maine. He called it the Round Table. It was a research group, but he was conducting paranormal research. They were conducting seances. And there was a Dr. Vinod there who was an Indian who's never been identified. He went back to India shortly after they began these series of seances and was never seen again, never heard from again. I'm not saying anything happened to him. It's just he kind of went back to India and people lost track of him. But the group, and this is, by the way, you can find this at gilberthouse.substack.com. Look for the article titled The Nine. It's really weird. They, who was in that group? There was an Astor. There was a Forbes.
The Bell helicopter.
Arthur. I'm trying to look up the article here real quick so I can bring it all in.
Also, the Carl Betts.
Carl Betts, who played Donna Reed's husband in the Donna Reed Show.
And was he the connection to Gene Roddenberry? Because
no.
Roddenberry got connected.
Roddenberry got brought in later on. Okay, I'm sorry. It was New Year's Eve, 1952. Puharich and the Round Table with a Hindu channeler named Dr. D.G. Vinod. D.G. Conducted a seance, made contact with something calling itself the Nine.
And the point person was Tom.
Yes, later identified.
Atum.
Yeah, Tom, and then Atum, who was the head of the Aeneid, which was the Egyptian pantheon, the 9 chief gods of the Egyptian pantheon that was based at Heliopolis, which is the pantheon that Joseph would have been in contact with when he was, the group was Henry Jackson, Georgia Jackson, Alice Bouverie, Marcella DuPont of the DuPont family, Carl Betts, Vonnie Beck, Arthur Young, the founder of Bell Helicom, Ruth Young, and Andrea Puharich. Alice Bouverie was an Astor, descendant of John Jacob Astor, daughter of Colonel John Jacob Astor IV, who died on the Titanic. Arthur Young, designer of the Bell helicopter, his wife was born Ruth Forbes of the Forbes family. But Ruth previously been married to George Lyman Payne, old money of the United States, and their son Michael Payne married a woman named Ruth Hyde. In 1963, Michael and Ruth Payne became friends with a young couple newly arrived from Russia, Lee and Marina Oswald, as in Lee Harvey Oswald.
Seriously, this is so, the synchronicity here of what we now know as our past history. The stuff that was going on then, setting all this up. Now, what was Jackie Kennedy's maiden name? Was it Bouverie?
No.
Something like that.
Jacqueline Kennedy. What was her maiden name? Looking her up now.
You're sitting there shouting it at us. I know you listening to this. You're way ahead of us.
Yeah. Yes, Bouvier. Good catch. I wonder, the same Bouvier?
Well, the way when you immigrate into a country, especially prior to the early 20th century, the way your names were spelled.
Bouvier, but the Alice Bouverie, B-O-U-V-E-R-I-E. So yeah, not the same.
Possibly connected somewhere along the line. They just changed the spelling, but who knows?
Yeah. So anyway, this group that called the Nine They declared God is nobody else than we together, the 9 principles of God.
Mm-hmm.
They declared that they were extraterrestrials who were orbiting Earth in a giant invisible spacecraft. They wanted the Round Table, this group led by this CIA contractor,
Yeah.
to lead.
You Saga readers, you're sitting there going, hold on, Round Table?
Yeah. They wanted the Round Table to lead a spiritual renewal on Earth. And
we've chosen you.
We have chosen you. So they were extraterrestrial, but also divine, ancient aliens. Mm-hmm. This is part of that whole idea.
What
Uri Geller became
called the Ascended Masters in some cases.
In a sense, yeah. A little different. I mean, that was the main difference between Crowley and Madame Blavatsky. Mm-hmm. Helena Blavatsky believed she was hearing from ascended humans, ascended masters. Crowley believed he was hearing from the Egyptian gods.
Yes, well, I do agree with that. But there's also a belief that the gods are actually ascended humans.
Yeah, that's basically what Blavatsky believed. Crowley believed they were the Egyptian gods. Here you've got them both. They're a floor wax and a dessert topping. They're extraterrestrial and divine. So Uri Geller, the spoonbender, became a member of the 9 for a while. And it was around the time in 1973. So they've been doing this for 20 years by this point, when the 9 finally identified themselves as the Egyptian gods. In other words, Atum was the creator god of the Egyptian pantheon. Around 1974 and 75, that's when Gene Roddenberry came in, the creator of Star Trek. And if you remember, Deep Space Nine, he also apparently wrote a screenplay treatment based on The 9, which was never developed, but then Deep Space Nine, which had a very strong religious thread through that whole series.
Getting back to JFK.
So yes. So again, yeah, you got the connection between this and the JFK. Yeah.
He was killed in 1963, and I have to tell you that to me was a spiritual moment. That was a sacrifice that took place on the 33rd parallel, by the way.
Yes.
And it was done by, we just got those JFK files released, and there are lots and lots of pages, and it takes a long time to comb through all of them. But the bottom line is, and you can even ask Grok and other AIs, can you summarize this for me?
Right.
Who killed JFK? And you'll see that it was probably a coalition of the intelligence agencies, the mafia, possibly other players. You get into occult aspects. And if you read Sinister Forces, you'll see that these occult aspects also connect in to UFOs. Believe it or not, Guy Banister and others, they were part of the intelligence community. They also were part of some of the occult and secret society groups. There's even a group called the Wandering Bishops.
Yeah, Peter Levenda's Sinister Forces gets into all of this. We kind of jokingly referred to it as the 6 degrees of Charles Manson, because that's kind of what it is.
And he begins with going to Ashland, Kentucky,
right,
which is where Manson was born, and how so many really strange spiritual things occurred there. The one thing, and we've interviewed Peter a number of times, and we went back and forth via email, and we respect him. I have no idea where he is right now as far as personal faith in a creator and a redemptor, but at the time, he just said he had a hard time believing in that. He does not have a hard time believing in the darker aspects of spiritual warfare. So it's my prayer that the day will come that he does recognize that if there's a dark aspect, then there's also the light, the good, the creator that all of these others are just rebelling against.
Exactly. His research has been very good, and I remember in one of the interviews I did with him, he did say that he believed, and this is more than 10 years ago, so again, his beliefs may have changed since then, to be fair, that with the proper purification and preparation, one could go into the spirit realm and interact with the entities there And that
is such foolishness. Just
well,
Vicky Joy Anderson.
It is. Ask those who have been part of the DMT research of Dr. Rick Strassman, people who've taken those ayahuasca trips and found that they were not pleasant. This is, in fact, we go into that in the book, The Gates of Hell. So, yeah, but having said that, again, his research into this realm has been very, very helpful in understanding what others have been trying to accomplish with that kind of research. And getting back to the JFK assassination and its connections to this high weirdness. You mentioned Guy Banister. If you've seen the movie JFK, Oliver Stone's film, which appears to be closer to the truth than a lot of people realize.
You have to wonder how Oliver Stone was given such access. Did he see some of these files?
Well, I don't know. A lot of this stuff was public information. I mean, especially after Jim Garrison's case against Clay Shaw in New Orleans. Clay Shaw was a wealthy man who was part of what appears to be some kind of conspiracy, but he was never able to prove that he was part of the conspiracy to actually kill John F. Kennedy. But those trial transcripts are available, and they're in the public domain. Banister was in New Orleans at the time Lee Harvey Oswald was handing out flyers for the, Fair Play for Cuba Committee. And his office just happened to be literally in the same building, ostensibly around the corner, so it wasn't obvious because the addresses were on streets that intersected, but they were literally in the same building, almost next door to one another, with Clay Banister, who was
practically the same office, just different numbers.
Banister was a private investigator at that point, but he was former FBI. And he used to be the special agent in charge of the Butte, Montana field office. Clay Banister investigated the
Guy Banister
investigated the Kenneth Arnold case.
Yes.
Which was the UFO flap over the Pacific Northwest in 1947, a couple of weeks before Roswell. So Banister, and he actually filed reports back to Washington that were designated something X, in other words, X files.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, and so you get from 1947 then to 1963, and Banister is connected to Lee Harvey Oswald, who again happened to be friends of the son and daughter-in-law of one of the people who was connected to the Nine and the Round Table. So it's unbelievable that these connections exist, and yet there you are. And this is all in the new book, Destination Earth, which, again, excerpts have been appearing on our Substack. So you can go to our Substack account and read these articles and these excerpts and get all of this. Peter Levenda, a lot of his research wound up in these in the books.
Are the Levenda interviews on the archives?
Yeah. Good. So you can go to our app if you just type in, because there's a search function in the app, by the way. Go to our app if you want to find anyone. I made sure that when we uploaded everything in there, the authors are always tagged, or the interview guests are always tagged. So if you want to find every interview we've ever done with Peter Levenda, just search for Levenda or Peter.
Levenda.
Right. And you can do the same thing with anybody, Heiser, Horn, Marzulli, whatever. And then we'll bring up all of the interviews across all of our programs where they've been guests. So
then you'll hear us talking about the various dogs we've had.
Yeah. Going back to Bell and Gretel, Murphy, and of course, Sam T. Doxson for many years. All of those will be there in the archives, which you can get, again, gilberthouse.org/app.
I think all those dogs are working in the archives up in heaven.
Probably. You're working on, Sam is arranging the rocks. We should probably take a break. We'll talk about the Giza Plateau. We got to talk about that.
Got to.
But also want to discuss one of the incorrect conclusions that have been drawn from the JFK archives that have been released. Yeah, that and more when PID Radio continues.
In the days of old, giants walked the earth. Scripture tells how David defeated Goliath, how angels serve the Creator. how the serpent deceived God's image bearers. The prophecies foretold of a coming Savior, one that would reach across the veil and set the captives free. Featuring L.A. Marzulli.
It's a suicide mission by the fallen angels.
Derek Gilbert.
UFO true believers, the ancient aliens prophets.
And Micah Van Huss.
So in the story of the giant of Kandahar.
At the Mysteries of the Bibleverse event in Carmel, Indiana.
Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Boy, your voice, honey.
Yeah, I know.
Remind you, by the way, I will say this for you. Not only download the app, as you mentioned before, but if you go to our website, gilberthouse.org/whatever, just gilberthouse.org, if you go to /store, you can see all of the connections to places where you can buy our books, buy our, stream our videos. You can buy the great T-shirts and ball caps and mugs and all sorts of great things that you can get from Light Hive Creations. You can help to support a music student who can't afford his or her own pianos or guitars or whatever. You can help to buy them for them by just buying a T-shirt. Also, go to /travel while you're at gilberthouse.org, and you'll see all the information about our October trip to Israel. And we would love for you to go with us because Carl Tykrib is our special guest.
Yes, Carl Tykrib, the author of the book Game of Gods, joining us, and we will be visiting ground zero in this long supernatural war. All of this that we're talking about, it all relates to how it ends, which is, of course, at Armageddon.
Amen to that.
Jerusalem.
By the way, he is at Paganicon right now.
Yes, in fact, Carl and I will be speaking this week. We'll we will record an interview. About his trip to Paganicon. We've done that in the past, but while we're there, we'll also talk about the upcoming tour of Israel. So you can find out more at gilberthouse.org/travel. Yes, trying to talk around that inflamed uvula.
I know that poor little uvula. Poor thing.
Yeah. Well, we're working around it. So yeah, gilberthouse.org/travel, gilberthouse.org/app, gilberthouse.org/video. Everything there is gilberthouse.org/
I got some elderberry syrup that I made yesterday.
I may take some of that.
Someone
can't hurt.
Forgive me, I can't remember who it was, but someone was kind enough to send us a kit for making that, all of the ingredients. So I made that syrup yesterday, and it is sitting in the fridge.
Well, that will be very helpful. Doing all kinds of things to boost my immune system. Dr. Sams has got me on a bunch of things that are doing that already as we're working under the possible assumption, the theory that perhaps some of what's going on here is viral, my neurological issues.
Possibly Epstein-Barr
infection. So working on that, and probably good, because that's probably been holding off whatever was going on in the back of my throat there for a while. So anyway, back to JFK, just for a bit. One of the conclusions that people have, as they've been going through this, 65,000 pages of documents, the massive document dump. Let me just say this, first of all. If the intelligence services who were powerful enough to eliminate an American president were involved, they probably had access to the archives and scrubbed a lot of what was going on or what they would have been responsible for. So I didn't expect anything in these files to be a smoking gun that pointed a finger at anybody in particular. However, there does seem to be a growing number of people on social media who are looking for specific keywords, and one of those keywords is Israel.
And I think one of the reasons for that is because it was announced early on, and this was intentional, I think, that Israel, this was the claim, that Israel had requested that all references to them be scrubbed.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's true.
I don't know that it's true. I do know that there are certain
because you
members
can still find it.
Well, yeah. I mean, they didn't do a very good job if they
didn't
requested, did they? There are certain influential members of the alternative media who have become more and more vocally anti-Jewish and anti-Israel. I'm talking about Candace Owens in particular.
Yep.
But others like Stu Peters and even Tucker Carlson to a degree.
Yeah.
But Candace Owens in particular she had said weeks ago that she predicted that Israel would be shown to be the responsible for eliminating.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I posted something to this effect on X a couple of days ago, and of course I got a bunch of people say, "Oh, we love your work, but we open your eyes, you're blinded." Okay, set aside what the Bible says about Israel and their role in the end times. Set aside the Jews and set aside all of that. Just look at Israel as a flawed nation run by sinful men and women, which makes them like 100% of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Look at those people running Israel as interested in self-preservation. We don't want to die, and we want to keep our country safe.
Exactly like the governments of every other country.
Exactly like every other government on planet Earth. Now, just think about this logically. Just don't even, just take the religion, take Bible, take God out of this. What would Israel have benefited by eliminating JFK and replacing him with Lyndon Baines Johnson?
Not at all.
Johnson was a tool of the Texas oil men.
Mm-hmm.
The Texas oil men were making lots and lots of money by partnering with the people who had all the oil in the Middle East, which was, as you say, the Arabs. We've heard this phrase since the first Gulf War. It's all about the oil. Well, yeah, in a lot of cases that actually is true. It's all about the oil. And when it comes to dealing with Israel in the Middle East, since the 1920s, before Israel was Israel, it's always been all about the oil. Who's got the oil in the Middle East? It ain't Israel. So you're going to take out a Massachusetts liberal and replace him with a Texas oil man. How does that benefit Israel? It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't.
I have a theory I think that the JFK assassination had been in the minds of, we'll just say, interested parties for a long time. He was early in his campaign clearly getting a massive groundswell of young people behind him and young people who could now vote. And they really wanted to change the world for the better. This is the president who began the Peace Corps. This is the president who wanted to, it was the first Catholic president, wanted to take American know-how and American largesse and make third world nations better. The Peace Corps was designed to do that, to go in and actually help people who had nothing. It wasn't about, but it was eventually used for political purposes.
Yeah.
That's not why it was set up. But he was told, you have to take, at the convention, you have to take Lyndon Baines Johnson, as your VP. That's it.
Yeah.
It was a smoking room deal. And he said, okay. He had been against a lot of the insiders, Henry Cabot Lodge, men like that, for a long time. But remember that Kennedy's dad was an insider.
Yeah.
Kennedy's dad went to the Chicago Mafia and said, I want you to go on the streets and get votes for my boy.
Sam Giancana, right. And it's pretty well accepted by historians now that it was Illinois being delivered for Kennedy that swung the election, and it was because of the shenanigans in Chicago.
Yes, but Johnson, heavily involved in the oil business, was going to benefit when a young president died on the 33rd parallel on 11/22.
Oh, yeah, add that together, so 33, right. Yeah, also remember that, so you got the mob that felt like it had been turned, that had been betrayed because Robert F. Kennedy, who was made Attorney General, despite never having tried a case in court. I didn't realize that.
I know, but
recently.
Both those Kennedys had been really going up against the swamp for a long time.
Right. Well, the mob thought that they had earned some gratitude, and Kennedy really started going after the mob in a big way. So Robert F. Kennedy sadly, when he ran for president, didn't survive either. So the mob was upset. The CIA director, Allen Dulles, was fired by John F. Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs invasion back in 1961.
The two Dulles brothers, I highly recommend researching them.
Yeah.
Part of the Swamp, Connections to Germany.
The book, yes, exactly. The book, The Secret War Against the Jews, by John Loftus and Mark Aarons, Aarons. Loftus was a former Department of Justice prosecutor who found, when he was tasked with trying to track down Nazis who would escape justice and were living in the United States, found not only were there escaped Nazis who'd escaped justice living in the United States, they were living in the United States with the protection of the United States Department of State. Stand down, Loftus. Loftus was angry about that. He was contacted by an investigative journalist, that's Mark Aarons, from Australia. And together they wrote the book, The Belarus Secret, which was about the guy responsible for one of the worst massacres of Jews during World War II. But out of the research that they pulled together during that, they realized that the intelligence agencies of the US, the UK, and then to a lesser degree, France, Germany, Soviet Union had, but especially the US and the UK, had worked against the Zionist movement in the 20s and 30s, and then had tried to destroy Israel in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even into the early 80s. The book runs up through the early 90s, actually, the George H.W. Bush administration. It is really well documented. And what you come away with is this: the Dulles brothers, Allen Dulles, who was Eisenhower's CIA director, John Foster Dulles, Secretary of State, the one for whom Dulles International Airport in Washington, D.C. is named, were traitors.
Yeah.
They were traitors. And the intelligence professionals interviewed by Loftus and Aarons said flat out those two should have been tried for treason, because during World War II, Allen Dulles, John Foster Dulles, who were both attorneys with the what they call the white shoe law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell, meaning very high end, they handled the oil trade between Saudi Arabia, the government of Spain, Generalissimo Francisco Franco, who was a fascist.
Yes.
So they sold oil because oil was not supposed to be sold to Hitler. Okay, we're in the middle of a war against Hitler, but you've got Americans and American oil companies. I mean, that's what Aramco stands for, the Arabian American Oil Company, Saudi Aramco, pumping the oil, selling it to Franco, and then Franco turning around selling it to Hitler. This was what the Dulles brothers were doing. So Dulles brothers, part of this unholy trinity of Arabia, America, and Germany during World War II. Now,
there were those in our government and in the British government who felt that supporting Hitler was important because he could stand up against Russia. Russia was being fleshed out as the new enemy.
Right. Well,
and I can't figure out why.
I don't know. The whole fascist versus communist thing, since they're both left.
Yeah, it's this whole Hegelian
dialectic, right. Well, the Dulles brothers wanted to make sure, Allen Dulles was responsible for setting up the rat lines.
Keep talking, I'm going to let the girls out.
Yeah, they're complaining in the back for there. And this is why the name James Jesus Angleton shows up in these documents, the JFK documents.
Yes, who also gets, he's part of the whole Cambridge spies thing.
Right. Yes, with Kim Philby, who went and served as a double agent for the KGB. His father, Jack Philby, betrayed MI6 and helped the Arabs, especially King Ibn Saud, for whom Saudi Arabia is named, set up his oil business, which made him extremely wealthy and financed wars against the Jews in 1946 through 48, 1956, 1967, 1973. Ibn Saud and Jack Philby, working through Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles, were sending oil to Germany during World War II. And they were doing so with the help of Standard Oil of New Jersey, which is the Rockefeller family. In other words, Allen Dulles was no friend of Israel. Allen Dulles and James Jesus Angleton, who was his man on the ground in Italy, coordinating with the Vatican to run the rat lines and smuggle Nazis and their money out of Germany.
And some of those Nazis were dressed as priests, as Jesuit priests.
Yes, and they got them out of there and sent them down to South America. So Allen Dulles continued on as the CIA director when John F. Kennedy became president and helped set up this operation at the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, which failed spectacularly. Kennedy fired Dulles, wanted to break the CIA into a million pieces. So yes, the CIA had its own reasons to take out JFK, but helping Israel was not one of those goals. The fact that James Jesus Angleton is mentioned in these documents in connection with Israel is not that he was trying to help Israel. It's that Israeli intelligence, and prior to that, Zionist intelligence, working for Israel's first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, found out what Angleton was doing. They found out what Allen Dulles was doing. They found out what Nelson Rockefeller was doing. And they used that information for Israel's benefit.
And they'd been doing that for a while.
Yes, yes. My presentation on this, on the secret history of Israel, is basically based on the secret war against the Jews, which is a rather long read, but if you love history and you're interested in the details,
It's a good read.
Highly recommended. But the bottom line is this: Angleton was threatened with exposure. So you're going to protect our guys who are embedded in American intelligence, or we'll expose you. We'll tell the world what you were doing during World War II. Similarly, Ben-Gurion threatened Dulles and said, we'll expose you and your clients if you don't help save some of the Jews in the concentration camps.
And oh, by the way, during World War II, the United States intelligence community, which at the time was called the OSS, was part of the Navy, and the Brits, which had very early MI5 and other, and in fact, Ian Fleming was one of them, working with
creator of James Bond.
Of James Bond. Both sides, according to Lavenda, were working with Aleister Crowley.
Okay. Use an occultist to understand what the occultists and the Nazis are doing.
Been in Germany at one time working with the OTO. He'd been in England working with the OTO, been in New York working with the OTO, and other occult organizations. And when you get into a secret society, it's very easy to blackmail people.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's half of being a spy.
They get involved in activities that they would not like to keep public, which is why most people have never heard the things that we're discussing about the Dulles brothers, for example. Nelson Rockefeller, David Ben-Gurion sent an operative to Nelson Rockefeller in November of 1947 because Israel, or the Zionists, needed to get the votes in the United Nations for the UN resolution to create an independent Israel in what was the British mandate of Palestine. Nelson Rockefeller, during World War II, was the head of an intelligence office called the Office of Inter-American Affairs, and he basically used it to enrich Standard Oil of New Jersey. You know, making deals with Nazis who've been smuggled out of Germany by Allen Dulles and James Jesus Angleton.
Yes.
And so the Zionists came to Rockefeller and said, okay, we've got this dossier on you. What do you want us to do with it? Either you get your contacts in South America to change their votes and vote for Israel, or we tell everybody what you did. And Rockefeller looked at it and said, okay, I'll make the calls, I'll get you your votes, but the price, he basically counter-blackmailed them. The price for getting those votes and getting you a country is that there will be no Nazi hunts. None of the names of the people involved here will ever be mentioned at Nuremberg or anywhere else. Nobody goes to the press. In other words, you've got a choice. You can either have a country or you can get revenge, but not both. And so they had to, the operative had to call Ben-Gurion, and he got a message back some hours later saying, okay, tell him it's okay. So anyway, Rockefeller, who later became the vice president of the United States, he was governor of the state of New York for 14 years. Rockefeller had been working, they had receipts, his name on bank records with Nazi officers. And Rockefeller was blackmailed into saying, okay, getting the votes Israel needed to become a nation.
Yes, and the Rockefeller family, we'll just end with this, very interesting in that Spiro Agnew was driven out of his position as vice president because of various scandals.
Right.
So he left.
Mm-hmm.
He was vice president to Richard Nixon.
Yep.
So Gerald Ford was put in, an unelected individual, was put into the position of vice
Scottish
president.
Rite Freemason.
And exactly. And then Nixon, who wasn't really popular with the insiders, he was drummed out of the presidency,
Mm-hmm.
and Gerald Ford moved up. So unelected president. So we get another unelected VP put in, who is Nelson Rockefeller.
Nelson Rockefeller, right. So anyway, and again, Rockefeller being in the oil business and that being heavily connected to what the Arabs were doing in the Middle East, no friend of Israel's, but was blackmailed into it by what Israeli intelligence had on him, or call it Jewish intelligence because it wasn't Israel yet, but what they had on him and on Allen Dulles and on James Jesus Angleton, what they were doing during World War II with the rat lines. So that's why you see Angleton mentioned in connection with Israel in the JFK files. There's one other document I've seen referenced where an unnamed Egyptian intelligence officer is quoted in a 1968 report as saying, Israel is no good. They were behind the JFK assassination. Bear in mind, 1968 was less than a year after Egypt had attacked Israel and lost.
It's also the year when RFK died.
Yeah.
And I think it's also when MLK died, Martin Luther King.
I think you're right.
1968 was a year of massive eruptions on campuses.
Right.
It was a year of assassinations. It was, those individuals who had gone into high school about the time that JFK died, and then they're entering college about the time that RFK dies, and because he was running for president. The inside machine did not want another Kennedy.
No, that's true. Did not. But again, it's not because Kennedy was trying to keep Israel from getting nuclear weapons.
No.
Johnson didn't want Israel getting nuclear weapons either.
Exactly.
And the fact that my point is that in the 1968 document that people are pointing to a single throwaway line by an unnamed Egyptian source as proof that Israel was behind. It's like, I'm sorry, that is a lack of critical thinking. Who is this guy? How would he have known? Consider his biases. It is not proof. So anyway, this whole thing that Israel's behind the elimination of John F. Kennedy it really just shows the confirmation bias of the people who are making those claims.
Well, I think that's exactly right. What I was going to say a second ago, and you know how my brain works. If I don't say it when I think of it, then I will lose it.
Yeah.
I'm about 10 years older than you are, and I just find that I lose things all the time. They're off in the ether somewhere. Trump wants to release the Martin Luther King files too.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the dirty secrets are ostensibly being put into the open for the public to read about and then draw their own conclusions. I think a lot of the information about MLK has also been out there.
Mm-hmm. That
it was not a single shooter. It was not that guy in the room across the way.
Arthur.
Yeah, it wasn't him. It was something else. And I read a book about that years ago, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of it, but it had to do with all of the little secrets that went into the investigation behind Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination.
James Earl Ray, that's what I was trying to say.
James Earl Ray,
yeah.
Yes. How could I forget that? But the truth is that these horrific public sacrifices,
mm-hmm.
if you look at this spiritually, they are done on specific times, specific places, to specific people. And oftentimes it scars an entire generation.
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy, for instance, and then later on Bobby, scarred an entire generation. Every one of us can remember exactly where we were when we found out about it. It was one of those moments, and it made us very distrustful of government.
Yeah. Yeah, and sadly, this is another dialectic where we've become so distrustful of the government, but also corporate media, that we disbelieve everything that they put out there,
Yeah.
which pushes us in the other direction, which means many people are inclined to believe everything from random YouTube user, whatever, which is just as liable to be disinformation and misinformation as what we're getting from the corporate media.
Bottom line is it's a spiritual war.
Yeah.
You have to look at the spirits behind it. What spirits are gaining through this event? And why use those particular humans?
Mm-hmm.
Why them? Why there? Why that? It's the same thing. Jesus battled the giants in the New Testament. He was battling the demons who were the spirits of the Nephilim, the spirits of the giants. So he was battling the giants over and over again. It was, the massive appeal to young people, if they actually knew that, they'd read the Bible. But he was doing things, specific places, specific events with specific witnesses and specific targets.
Yeah.
So at the Grotto of Pan, he was making a statement about the event in Genesis 6. He was making a statement about the particular pantheon that was being worshipped there, and how all of the things that the Watchers had done to try to unseat Yahweh, to try to create their own army. Jesus was there to say, ain't going to happen again. I am here to build my ecclesia. I am here to, in fact, I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to climb this mountain and I'm going to show up in the throne room of El. And I'm going to declare judgment against you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm building my church. You tried to build your body using human flesh? Nuh-uh. I'm building my church. The day is coming, though, when the Antichrist is going to try again to build an army using human flesh. He's going to build the anti-body for the Antichrist.
Yes.
Of course, he'll say he's Christ.
And it may be that the transhumanist movement is leading in that direction.
I think you are right on that. And that leads up to a conference that we're going to down in Blue Eye, Missouri in April, next month. Oh, my goodness. It's only a few weeks away.
That's right. The Aliens, AI, and the Antichrist Conference.
Hope I can see the page well enough to write my talk. I don't do well with text to speech. I've had a few people say, why don't you try that? I tend to be creative, believe it or not, through my hands. And so it goes from my brain to my fingertips. But I may have to try text to speech for that talk.
Well, pray that whatever method you use works out. I know that though there's so much to talk about right now that
I know.
But yeah, it is going to be a wonderful gathering. Carl Gallups will be there. Alan DiDio, Dave Robbins, who took over for Irvin Baxter when Irvin Baxter was called home. Joe Artis Horn will be there. Vicki Joy Anderson.
Oh, yes.
And L.A. Marzulli will be Skyping in. So join us down there. Admission is free, but you do need to register in advance because seating is limited. So they want to make sure they've got enough seats for everybody. If you can't be there, you can watch it. It will be streamed on video, $25 to stream. The information is at readynowexpo.com, readynowexpo.com for all of that information. We've got a number of other conferences we'll be attending. July, the Go Therefore Conference. August, the Remnant Rising Conference in Springfield, Missouri. And we're looking forward to that. And of course, we've got the Israel tour with Carl Teichribb. We've been to Israel with Carl Gallups once already.
We probably will ask him to go again with us.
Yes.
Assuming that we're going to see how October goes, because your energy levels are a little different. The way you walk is a little different.
Yeah.
But I think the Lord's going to give you grace to get through all that.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, we got a treadmill back there, so I need to get on there and start building up the leg.
Get out there and tread.
Yeah. So information on all of our upcoming events you can find at our app. Look under the calendar section or go to the website, gilberthouse.org. You'll find the calendar there as well.
It's in the menu.
One other thing, because we did mention this early on, we got to talk about Giza.
Oh, geezers?
Yeah, the OGs, the old geezers.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on that right there.
There is a claim out there that this huge earth-changing discovery has been found underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza. This dates back to a paper that was published in August of 2022. And it didn't get any traction then. This was in a journal called Remote Sensing, using a synthetic aperture radar, SAR.
Mm-hmm.
And they claim that they have used the Italian Cosmo SkyMed satellite system to process a series of SAR images to find what is being claimed in some of these reports, a vast city underneath the Giza pyramids. Now, bear in mind, again, this article was first published 2.5 years ago. And now all of a sudden, they've got these really cool graphics showing these massive cylinders with stairways leading around the outside below these little houses.
I can create those too.
Yeah, yeah. According to, and I'm going to read very quickly from the Daily Mail article, researchers from Italy and Scotland claim to have discovered or uncovered a vast underground city, that's quoting from the researchers, which stretches more than 6,500 feet directly beneath the pyramids of Giza. 6,500 feet, that's 1.25 miles, making them 10 times larger than the pyramids themselves. The bombshell claim, which many experts claim to have already debunked, yeah, but we know what we don't trust those experts, comes from a study that used radar pulses to create high-resolution images deep into the ground beneath the structure, the same way radar is used to map the depths of the ocean. The paper, which has not been peer-reviewed by independent experts, found 8 vertical cylinder-shaped structures extending more than 2,100 feet below the pyramid and more unknown structures 4,000 feet deeper.
Okay, so it's saying a city.
A vast underground city, yes. And this is being, again, Daily Mail, of course, it's one of the red tops that always looks for really interesting stuff. The images that were presented, what they found in this ground-penetrating radar, is not anything like what they've published now in these new reports that are showing these cylinders with stairways around the outside.
I know. Look, GPR, when you look at it, it looks like noise. It looks like white noise. And you learn how to read the white noise. That's not what's being shown with the graphics accompanying these articles now.
No, what they're showing is artists' depiction.
Yes, exactly.
What you get when you actually look at the representation from the SAR, what do they call it? Synthetic aperture radar, whatever they call it. Right. It's like looking at rainbows.
Kind of.
Rainbows.
It doesn't look like the...
No, it's a bunch of, from blue to red, and it's, okay, it's kind of a big blobby shape that might
look like it looks like noise.
Yeah. And so based on that, an artist came, okay, that looks like a cylinder with a stairway around the outside. Like, really? Because to me, it looks like, I don't know. The
point is, don't take everything at the Daily Mail and other reports on this as the gospel, that it actually exists and actually looks like that.
Well, yeah, and think logically about this too. I mean, the claim is we don't know how this could have been done, but it's been done, so it must be aliens? Must be just look, we're open to the idea that there was an advanced pre-flood civilization that was able to build more things than we're capable of. But just from a structural standpoint, digging down 1.25 miles below these...
using the tools that they had at the time that those structures were built.
Oh, see, that just proves that they had tools that we don't know about. They were probably using lasers and stuff. We don't know that, and these guys don't know that. And the people who are making these claims on social media are doing it because they get clever.
I saw a photograph of Chuck Norris building it at Facebook.
Using dinosaurs.
Yes. Yes. Chuck Norris, possibly Putin may have been in there. I don't know. Probably, Trump or Trump's ancestor.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is this is an artist's representation of what he was told to design.
Yep.
You can get AI to create also. I can get an AI to make a version of me riding a dinosaur.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. We've gotten a number of questions from people. Do you think this is credible?
No.
In short, no. It is not credible. These are, in fact, when you read the paper by these gentlemen, let me see if I can find the quote here, because once I saw this, I stopped reading.
Well, the other question is if there are openings beneath the pyramids that go down that far, is it possible that they're just natural?
If there is something down there, basically what they found are perhaps anomalies underground, but these are not high resolution images. These are low resolution images. They don't reveal any detail. The images that are being shown that show these cylinders extending more than a mile into the ground were created by an artist.
Yeah.
They are not what they scanned. Quote, the authors are open to the possibility that a technologically more advanced civilization existed before a known timeline where the existence of various glacial ages.
Daily Mail?
No, this is from their paper in 2022.
Okay.
It said prevented the passing down of history. They focus on the mythical cities mentioned in ancient Indian texts describing how that subcontinent was an integral part of this. However, how the Egyptian pyramids were built has remained an enduring mystery, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, these guys are ancient aliens guys.
Yeah.
And this paper that was published is open source. It is not peer reviewed.
Okay.
And so, no.
I'm just going to forget I ever saw it.
Exactly.
That's my approach to it.
This has been put out there. And this is why Donna and Allie and I wrote the book Destination Earth. We don't know how this was made, so it must be aliens.
Well,
ancient aliens. No.
I think that's probably where we need to end. Unless, of course, we're going to, to blame, what's her name, Penelope.
Penelope Keith.
Penelope Keith's an actress that we really like to see. She's in a show called To the Manor Born, and her name appeared on one of the JFK pages as a possible
assassin. Yeah.
Penelope Keith, are you joking? So whoever put that in there, it's an Easter egg that was meant to be found. So I can't wait to see what other Easter eggs are in.
Yeah. Well, I think the bottom line here is when Jesus said we are to love our Lord, the Lord our God, with all of our hearts, souls, and minds, we need to engage our minds.
Yes.
And just because a certain keyword shows up in these documents doesn't mean, it's proof they're responsible. And just because an artist comes up with really clever artist's depiction of these massive underground structures that proves that an ancient civilization that is now, does not mean that it ain't necessarily so. To use the phrase from the old song.
I love that song.
Yeah, but when it comes to the Lord Jesus Christ resurrected, that was so, witnessed by hundreds of witnesses.
Amen.
And that is something that we can bank on. That is a future that is secure. Tomorrow night on View from the Bunker, Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz.
Oh,
he's a writer for Israel 365 News, Israel365news.com. He's got a new book called The Return of the Red Heifers. And this is a perspective from somebody who received rabbinical training. So we can get a Jewish perspective on what the red heifers means. Teaser, they don't mean the third temple is imminent. In fact, he says, we don't need a third temple. We had sacrifices for years without a temple.
That's true.
Yep.
In fact, most Jews over there don't want a third temple.
That is correct. So we talk about that tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker. Tomorrow morning, Bible study. Please join us then. And until then, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace and Glory, who want inside from outside. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio, or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.